wine is 97% water and ethyl alcohol, which is derived from the fermentation process. And chemists perform tests to understand its molecular structure and help winemakers improve the quality and production of wine.
Hello. Wine has been made for thousands of years by people, about 8,000 years to be exact. About 6,000 BC, the people of South Caucasus started to develop wine from choice grapes that they would turn into fermented alcohol. About 2000 BC, the Greeks developed their own little version of this wine, and then about 1668, you had the first development of Champagne in the Champagne region of France. In the 1800s, many vineyards in France experienced severe drought and crop disease. This led to an increase in the aging process out of a necessity to preserve the older wines from before the drought. In modern times, roughly 44% of all adult Americans drink wine, and personally I estimate that about 100% of fun aunts drink wine. Some major people in the history of winemaking include Herodotus, who decided to put wine in wooden barrels in 500 BC, Dom Perignon, who invented champagne in 1668, and Antonio Galloni, who's a modern famous wine expert who's made several contributions to the wine industry. Now we will discuss the process of winemaking, from grape to bottle, and how chemistry takes a major role in the production of this drink. This is not a vineyard, but for the purposes of this video, we have temporarily planted grapevines, as you can see over here. Grapes grow according to general properties of biochemistry, and the fruit comes from the growth out of tiny flowers on woody stems in something called a bushel. When a wine grape is properly ripened, its juice contains 70 to 80% water and has the relative balance of sugars, organic acids, phenolic, nitrogenous, and aroma compounds, minerals, and pectic substances that the winemaker desires, which chemists can measure and record to help the winemaker know exactly the levels that they prefer in their high-quality wines. Soil affects grape flavor in the way that properly balanced nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and calcium are able to be built into compounds for aromas and flavors by the grapevine. Warmer climates lend to wines that are more alcoholic, less acidic, and contain less anthocyanins, creating a relatively poorer wine quality. This is generally considered a less fresh wine, while cooler yet not too cool climates lend to higher quality grapes that take longer to ripen. Now let's talk about fermentation, the process of converting sugar into carbon dioxide and alcohol. Wine is not distilled like other spirits, but is fermented using yeast. Fermentation occurs when glucose is converted to carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol. This sugar is derived from the grape's juice. Yeast converts this sugar into alcohol by digesting the sugars, and alcohol and carbon dioxide are the byproducts of the yeast using the sugars for nutrients. Once the alcohol content reaches a high enough level, the yeast die and fermentation slows down, hence why wines do not continue to ferment after being put on the shelf. A main factor that affects the process of fermentation is the fermentation vessel's material. Wood, steel, concrete, and clay are popular materials, and each can affect the flavor based upon their composition and for a faster or slower rate of oxidation of the wine, which winemakers can decide based on preference. Once fermentation is over, the wine is transferred to aging vessels, generally either oak wood or stainless steel, where they are held until the desired character is reached, and differently aged wines can also be blended to reach a desired taste of a winemaker. Wine can be aged from anywhere from a couple of years to multiple decades. Barrel material matters, and oak wood generally imparts a vanilla or caramel flavor due to the high oxygenation the wood allows, as well as organic compounds found in the wood that are imparted into the wine, while stainless steel is much more controlled and allows little to no oxygenation and imparts no outside flavor to the wine. Again, these are often mixed to create the perfect balance of flavor and controlled character in a wine. Wine is then bottled, and the stopper is placed to regulate the oxygen transfer rate, or OTR. The required OTR can vary depending on the type of wine, but in general, the OTR controls how and when the wine's tannins undergo polymerization, a reaction that binds them together in long chains. Once they bind together, tannins fall to the bottom of the bottle as sediment, which is generally strained out in older wines. They lose their ability to bind with other compounds, and the aged wine loses its pungent nut qualities and starts to taste more mellow. Thus why wines that have been bottled for longer are more highly valued, and why you might use a decanter to rapidly oxidize a wine before tasting it. When tasting wine, the taste and touch receptors on your tongue are flooded with sensory input, as the systems that control the muscle movements for your tongue, cheek, and jaw are activated, which allows someone to develop what is known as a mouthfeel for the wine. Olfactory receptors interpret these signals and relay their information to the brain. Tasting in the winemaking process is a highly important and highly enjoyable job that allows wine experts to decide what ratio of flavorful oak-aged wine and characteristic steel-aged wine should be blended based on taste, and how the wine's flavor can be improved. Over time, chemists have developed new technologies like stainless steel vessels, as well as improving the fermentation process to better the quality of wines and to better understand how chemistry affects wine character. Chemists still do not fully understand how to predict what a wine will taste like before it has been processed, so new technology is still needed to fully understand the chemical mysteries of wine. Although we do not know everything about the chemical characteristics of wine, we do know that chemistry plays a major role in its development and taste. From the farm to the glass, wine is constantly undergoing chemical change in order to produce a one-of-a-kind, high-class flavor. Thank you, and good night.
Je n'avais jamais ôté mon chapeau devant personne. Maintenant je rampe et je fais le beau quand elle me sonne. J'étais chien méchant, elle me fait manger dans sa menette. J'avais des dents de loup, je les ai changées pour des quenottes. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui ferme les yeux quand on la couche. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui fait ma...
Read it. Okay. In the 1800s, the vineyards in France experienced... Read it. In the 1800s, the vineyards in France experienced severe drought and plant disease, causing all of the grapes, not all of them, I can't say that. Okay.
J'étais dur à cuire, elle m'a converti, la fine mouche. Et je suis tombé tout chaud, tout rôti, contre sa bouche, qui a des dents de lait quand elle sourit, quand elle chante, et des dents de loup quand elle est furie, qu'elle est méchante. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui ferme les yeux quand on la couche. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui fait maman quand on la touche. Tous les somnambules, tous les mages m'ont dit sans malice, quand ses bras en croix je subirai mon dernier supplice. Il en est de pire, il en est de meilleur, mais à tout prendre, qu'on se pende ici, qu'on se pende ailleurs, s'il faut se pendre. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui ferme les yeux quand on la touche. Je me suis fait tout petit devant une poupée qui fait maman quand on la touche.
All right, drive it. Oh.